the skin 2 picks can go up. Yeah. I think it's looking really nice.
It's beginning to come together. Table to go first.
Now that, I don't know if that can go there, because I think this is going to be an area where we're projecting things.
I thought I was going to go first. I can move it.
Good music.
It's hard to be there for the one in there. Evie, this is my old shoulder on the bar. Where I was looking at the old place, it's nice actually. We just had one that was a little bit
Oh, here we go. Style. Oh, it's nice to see you. Yeah. And you became a minister. I know, somebody who associates last time we met, you were doing something new. Maybe that was it.
Yeah.
Not that I was being a minister at all.
Not really.
No.
So what are you up to?
I'm still doing all the things I run along. Still doing my movement. Yes. Yeah. Because he always helped me out. So yeah.
Every week down at the Pine Saucer Cafe.
Oh, did you? I didn't know.
Yeah.
Or you come to Lidl. What other chocolates in Lidl?
The one that's far end of Cape Town.
Yeah.
At least it's as well, they're much older, they're really old, they're like early 80s. So I don't think.
Yeah, no, that's nothing to do.
No, that's, yeah, it's just the latest doing that. Yeah.
Technology for reasons that are apparent.
My son Benjamin, who's also autistic.
Oh, the guy in the mask?
Yeah.
Magnificent. We've had a brilliant time together. Yeah, it's cool. Is it on your husband's side or yours?
I think all three of my kids in what we now term neurodivergent. Each one has their own flavour, as everybody does. So I think
That's simple. You never did a damn thing wrong. You get all these parents, So when you see my auntie is the old dragon, this is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So how long have you been in the Tom? I do apologise, it's obviously the atmosphere. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Really cool. I like the strength of the dragon. It's got loads of beautiful detail. Because it's a thin dragon, I've always seen big
Yeah.
ones.
And also it's not angry. I didn't want an angry one. I wanted one with grace.
Ah, now you're talking about women's tattoo.
Graceful dragon.
Yeah. I gave the tattoo artist a lot of ideas. I said, you know, when we worked together for 3 years, so
There's another woman who did it.
yeah.
That counts as well. That's
Yeah.
Yeah, your son and I have had a great time. Cool. Wow, what he's been through, all this holding stuff.
Yeah. He's got a lot of challenges.
We all have everybody has artistic we're just very neurotic. And everything else is so-called OCD, ADHD, and then nature's actually. Yeah.
My youngest is ADHD and she's so scattered and it's all so hard. And she also has subject permanence, impermanence. So if something isn't in front of her, she has absolutely no idea what's in front. So she loves her friends and then she gets nothing. And they get really annoyed.
I have a kind of memory thing myself. Is she going to a martial art yet? And kind of focusing on anything?
We're getting her a personal trainer.
You got it.
They all did one-to-one sport.
Right,
The other
cool.
two. The other two did one-to-one sport.
That's it, you've got to focus that energy. That's why I do an hour to 2 hours of walking represent that.
So what
Walking, kung fu,
Yes.
various things. Are you after my phone? No. Go You've got to give her a lifetime challenge. Like for me, it was on the sci-fi show so I was born in 1963. And when I was 16, it was so traumatizing because between Kurt and Scott, which is a good dichotomy, and also the Doctor. So you've got to give her a Tomb Raider Laura Croft thing. She's got to be into heroin.
Benjamin Hammer,
Yeah.
but then he also did Pima. So he did Pima a lot.
She's got a good female role.
I mean, I might want to be a 6-foot purple lobster and have 6 arms. I could be 6 arms. Or forget all about that. Let's be an amoeba and join together with loads of people down the road of mine and squidge together.
Trudy Barber has designed a VR experience that combines a head-mounted display with a walk-through gallery to create an immersive sexual experience.
I devised this corridor which you walk through, and it's like an analogy for what sex may look like in the future. Then by the time you've sort of gone, hey wow, this is weird, it's your turn to do the VR. So it creates a whole environment. I think VR just on its own is a bit of a letdown for people. People are disappointed with it because it is such a primitive technology.
But if you want the real artificial thing, you've got to go to Germany. For in Cologne, 2 people working in the area of teledildonics have developed a suit that actually does work. A suit which allows humans to stimulate each other over telephone lines. The first Cyber SM connection took place between Paris and Cologne on the 8th of December 1993, and it lasted 3 days.
They have a screen that would select what kind of body they wanted. And then what they would do is send that down the modem line to somebody in Paris. And they would do exactly the same thing and send the picture back to you in Cologne. And then what you do is you get the arrow and you touch various parts of that body, and your body is not your own, you get vibrated from the other person.
But this is only the beginning. As the technology becomes more sophisticated, more and better possibilities will develop, which will challenge our concepts of eroticism and sexuality.
It will be the ultimate in sort of safe sex. I just hope people won't confuse it with real-time sex, because it's going to be an alternative perception of sex.
So, strap in, tweak out, and turn on.
Torture Garden, and I've shown at the Letheby Gallery. I've been artist in residence with National Power. It's where my interest in sort of the figure and machinery came in, really, and equipment attached to the human body. Because I saw the turbines and stuff in the power station as the human figure, if you like, making the power. And I'm interested in hospital machinery being attached to the figure, and you know, this kind of thing makes me think of hospital beds and things like that. And then, of course, the ultimate man-machine interface is virtual reality, which is it's just so exciting. I couldn't leave that behind. So I did my thesis on virtual reality, and I actually managed to get in touch with a company called Virtual S. They're a brand new company, and they are, you know, working with artists and people with creative ideas because the computer is now so user-friendly that somebody who's creative and not technologically minded can actually use the kit. So I've got lots of imagination for this kind of thing. So they've started tutoring me on the actual computers. So I'm actually going to start working on a fairly serious idea for a virtual reality sex environment. So you're right, Paul. So that's what I'm doing now. We've come up with a sort of a little funny quickie for tonight, which should be quite amusing. As soon as you put the headset on, whether you're male or female, if you're female, you'll have the body of a male with a rather large member. And if you're male, you've got the body of the Venus de Milo. And I won't tell you what else happens. It's like having sex with yourself within yourself. It's quite fascinating, really, because it opens so many doors and so many ideas, but they're really quite creepy because you could be thinking about the end of procreation as we know it, really, because people would be too happy to be in their living rooms plugged into their machines having a job with a 12-foot purple lobster, because you can actually pretend in the machine, you say, oh, I don't want to wear my rubber outfit today, I'm not going to be a 6'2" glamorous dominatrix, I want to be a large prawn. And you could so it's really kind of good. I mean, the environment we've designed for tonight in virtual reality, we've got our condoms talking to you and things like that. So you can have absolutely anything you like. And I think the other thing is try not to get too serious about this all, because I think it's so funny as well. And I think sometimes, you know, people who wear some outrageous gear also look hilarious. And I think that the humour and the sex as well works together.
When I was a young pervert, have you given me IT for a job like this?
I'm interested in models of current technology as models for ourselves as we are now. It's difficult to explain, but I tend to see virtual reality as like a model for the parapsychology of the mind during orgasm. If you're talking about something like Freud, if you look at the ego as like the steam engine, as it was at the time, it was his technology. You've got the ego as maybe the boiler, and the steam as the id, the release valve, that kind of thing. That's how I look at virtual reality. Totally mad. Absolutely. I need to be known.
30 odd years ago, and I'm still doing it now. So things have developed, things that we projected at, that we looked at, that we forecast, have now all come true. And now we've got the next stage of augmented reality coming along, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens with that, because I'm going to be working on some of those kind of things. So I hope you've been sort of interested and amused and made you think about some of the things that I had talked about with Mark, and the sort of possible body futures that we've got still to come. So unfortunately I'm going to have to go back to wonderful sunny Portsmouth now, so I can't really stay for much of the evening, but you can always email me on trudy.barber@port.ac.uk if you want any further information and about some of the possible things that we can be doing now. Because I'm doing paintings in virtual space now with some software called OpenBrush, where I'm actually drawing in virtual space and things like that. So I'm still as mad as I was then, only I think I'm still quite a large prawn, actually, at the end of the day. And it was nice to see some of the old faces, some of them here were on that video. So yes, thank you very much, and thank you, Mark, for your inspiration.
All right. Where's Mitch? Mitch, are you free? Okay. Hi everybody. I was going to do an intro, but I'll skip that now. And I've persuaded Trudy to have a brief conversation with my friend Mitch Altman. Mitch Altman came to talk about electrical medicine, which Mark Bennett was really interested in, and he's going to have a lot to say about that later. But in the meantime, I thought it just might be interesting for Trudy and Mitch to have a little conversation. Mitch was very involved with the invention of virtual reality, and the other day we were talking about it in my backyard, and he was very cynical about it. He was like, "Oh, that's a complete hoax. I should know I invented it." Sorry, but I don't want to trump you. It's like Trudy obviously, it has proven that Mitch is wrong. Mitch just because you invent something doesn't mean you get last say on it. So I thought, a short debate on whether the merits of virtual reality and how much is it working? Is it good? How much meaning is there, and to what extent is it a hoax? So. It's good, it's clapping and everything, but what we really want to do is go into some sort of, cat fight. Just because that will be entertaining before Trudy has to go back to Portsmouth.
Yeah, you talked a bit about your work. Virtual reality is not a hoax. Virtual reality does work. It absolutely works. What we learned, so I'll back up. I worked for a company called VPL, which stood for at the time.
Virtual Programming Language.
Visual Programming Language. There we go. So we thought we were making a visually oriented programming language, but the technology didn't exist at the time to actually succeed. But there were these input-output devices that would make it so we could have these really cool ways of creating blocks of programming stuff and put them around. We could have these things which only let your eye and vision system see what the computer shows you. And we had gloves, and you could see your hand and move these blocks around and all this stuff. And visual programming language never happened, but the input-output devices became interesting for a lot of people, including people at NASA and some doctors. And so we thought, well, we can make these things which give us an alternate version of reality. And what we learned is that it takes very little for our minds to call something real. Our intellect can be telling us, oh, you're sitting in an office chair in Silly Valley, when every aspect of your entire being is saying, no, I'm floating on a cloud following purple pigeons. And that's what's much more real than sitting in a chair which you're not even proceeding anymore. So yeah, that was 1986, 1987. And what got me really sour on virtual reality is that yet again, another one of the projects that I worked on with other people and all of our creative output going into this project, and then the US military comes along and wanted it, as they want everything in the country that I left. I live in Berlin now, and yeah, so we would not sell to the military, but they got one anyways through the University of Central Florida, because in that country, the US military pays for all engineering and psychology and so many other university departments. So they were bragging about it on this old part of the internet called Usenet. And they said, yeah, we fooled them, we got one of their systems, and we used it for a World War III training simulator. So after that, I had no more interest in virtual reality. But that doesn't mean that it's not useful for anything. So I'm not against what you're doing at all. I think what you've been doing with it since '93 is awesome. Like sexuality is a big part of all of us, and we can't ignore it. We're supposed to put it aside in polite society. But I think we're all being polite here, and you had big dildo-looking things on the screen.
I think I wanted to sort of like get some kind of open debate going, which has certainly happened now. Things like, you know, transgender, post-gender, multiple gender issues, and how we relate to our bodies, and how we interact creatively. And I've been particularly interested in terms of making my artwork, about making mark making, which is what I used to do, well I still do it, with analog drawing and painting with like charcoal, and actually making those visceral marks. But I can now do that as well with something like OpenBrush software, where I'm in the digital space and I can make all sorts of different types of brush strokes and make them as big as me, make huge brush strokes, and then make really tiny, tiny ones, and I can move them around and make them big and move them around again, and it's just really expanded my my axis of mark making, which I find really, really intriguing. How do you feel that it's impacted on creativity, actual creativity?
Well, that's what we were wanting. One of the early things that we did with it, you know, we didn't have any reason to be doing this. We were just doing it because it was cool. You know, in Silly Valley, they call that a solution in search of a problem. And that's almost every company down there. But so that was us, for sure. And one of the early things we did, though, was called air guitar. So, you know, and like teenage boys are doing this. But when you're doing that in VR, it can actually be making music that other people can experience. And so that was a really cool version of art form. But we also had one person doing the software for creating virtual worlds. And he created a method for doing kind of what you're doing now, but very primitive. And you can create shapes and objects and brush strokes and whatever, and then you can wander around in it, and other people can wander around in it with you. And
that's one of the things I find really sort of amazing. And now I'm quite interested in how you can overlay that into your real life, where you've got this augmented reality, which is quite interesting and also quite scary, I think.
I think it'll be another more powerful medium, and we already have powerful medium in our lives, and it's just another means for us to be marketed at.
No, I agree. So what do you think the future's going to be, do you reckon?
Well, as a human, I've seen that we have a very poor track record of being able to predict the future, and I'm just as bad as everybody else. So I don't know. If we survive and don't go extinct, we'll probably figure out a way to not just be batted about by forces that want to market at us. Yeah. But for a while, we're going to be having to contend with that more and more. I mean, now we have all these little screens.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what? These are very compelling forces in our lives, and we've got to deal with that. So how can we use this technology for something that enhances the creators' lives, like you, like me, like probably many of us here, as well as other people that we share it with, and not just to be taken away and used for World War III training simulators, and or just more mundane being marketed at, just as how much money?
So I'm quite intrigued by the way people are talking this evening about neurodivergence and being on different spectrums. And I have synesthesia, so
Cool.
I see what I hear and hear what I
So
see.
you see colors from sound, or?
Yes, yeah. So and also from the smells, I get sensations in my mouth, like powder or salty or whatever. And I'm quite intrigued with augmented reality and virtual reality now as to how we could maybe get people to experience somebody else's synesthesia or their perception of their neurodivergence by actually inhabiting that and creating that in a virtual space. I think that sort of thing would be really fascinating to work on.
And you can do that, right?
Well, we could, couldn't we? Why not?
Because like you're hearing sound in a virtual space, and it's in stereo. It's actually 3D sound.
Binaural sound and everything. Yeah.
And so as you turn your head around, you're hearing these sounds, and then that can translate into exactly what you're seeing if you're good enough to use the medium to create that.
Yeah.
Are you good enough to do that?
Well, I've got another friend of mine who has the same type, was really good, has the same type of synesthesia as me. So he showed me, he played me a sound, some sounds that he'd made, and he said, "What do you see?" And I described what I saw, and then he said, "Well, this is the drawing I made from the sound," and it was almost exactly the same as what I described. So that's really fascinating as to whether people have the same types of synesthesia or not. So there's all sorts of different ways we could play around with that and put it in a virtual space, or in augmented reality, where you could almost say, okay, we're going to stick you in a virtual space, and we're going to give you something to hear, and here's something for you to make marks from what you're hearing, and you could, that would be really quite interesting thing to do. But then this is the kind of thing that I really like, that we can all, explore those kind of ideas.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
When I was a little kid, my parents raised me on Western classical music, and there was this Scriabin guy who was synesthetic, is that the word? And he composed evidently in color.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just so cool, and I wanted to be that way, but I wasn't. So, but with VR or AR, I could experience that.
I think that would be one of the things we could do, but that's a future thought.
We have a VR and AR expert here this evening, Kevin Williams.
Kevin Williams.
You just got upstairs.
We have an expert friend of Mark's for 20 years, a friend of mine for 10 years, and he's here tonight. He can extrapolate and elaborate on the subject, but he has here he is. Kevin!
I'm probably going to have
They're just discussing the prospects of VR and AR.
I prefer physical reality.
Oh, can you 5 minutes?
Whatever you want, please. We're here to celebrate Mark.
Please.
The one thing that I was hoping for this technology to achieve by now is to improve my brain, especially as I damage my brain on a constant. So I make the world's biggest mistake: visual programming language. Oh, what a fool! The thing about Mark was that he was a specialist in human nature, but also he was a visionary. And the thing that makes me most unhappy about him not being here is that I'm going to now spend as long as I live saying, "Oh, Mark showed me that. Oh, Mark did that." All of that technology upstairs now, there are museums that would kill to have that visual 3D immersive technology. And it's just going to drive me mad that he's not here to receive the proper plaudits that he deserved. But by all the happy faces that have been touched by him that I see out here, it makes me happy that he lives on.
Yeah.
But anyway, what was the question?
We were talking about AR and VR into the future.
MR now, my dear.
MR now.
Mixed reality. Everybody, Apple doesn't want to call their technology. The Apple View that will be the thing that you'll be hearing constantly about in the next couple of months, Apple's virtual reality head-mounted display, they don't want to call it VR, they want to call it MR because the connotations of the people that have gone before them, they may have to start paying patents, so it's better to call it something different. As my father used to say, nothing is new, they just changed the wrapper. Spinning. Now you have touched upon virtual reality, you've touched upon augmented reality. Is this the human machine, the thing that Mark always talked about, the playing with the brain, one of his favourite films, which he was kind enough before he passed to send me a copy of the Laserdisc, was Brainstorm.
Wow.
Sadly, I lost two visionaries in my life back to back. I was just trying to call Mark to tell him that Bob Trumbull, the man who created special effects for 2001 and Blade Runner, had passed, who was a personal friend. And then I was notified that Mark had passed. So obviously God is collecting technologists.
Master plan.
Master plan, yes. He's had enough of augmented.
He's working for Meta.
Yes. Now we know. But the issue for me is...
It's going out on Facebook, stop!
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's not going out on Facebook.
And Mr. Zuckerberg has... it makes me that people complain that, why are you complaining about Facebook on Facebook? I said, well, because it's there.
Where else would you
complain about it? You're not going to complain about TV on radio. You're going to complain about it on TVs. But anyway, it's all right. The issue with the mind machine. Do you know? I know that sex and language and all of that is important to you. But where do you see this type of technology going forward?
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying before. We have a very poor track record in predicting the future. But media always goes towards profit and power. And this is the context within which we live. And so that's where I see it going. And whatever we put out within, with this technology is going into that cultural context. So it will be used for that. It's up to us to create other contexts to put it out into so it can be used for more positive things. It'll still be used for those other things, but hopefully these other contexts that we can create can use it for more positive, and other people can join in on that if they find it worthwhile. So that's one of the things I do with creating communities as I continue to create technology. So that's all I can think of. But it will be used for more and more powerful means of manipulating all of us to buy shit we don't want or need.
Oh, we're humans. Consume, that's what we do. We're quite bad at it. Obviously, that's why we buy crap. The issues, I suppose, for me regarding Mark's passing is that he was a bit. The first time I actually had the chance to work with Mark was when virtuality, a name a blast from the past, W Industries had just come to the surface, and virtual reality was a term. Mr. Lanier had coined the term, and so Mark was really touched it. His finger on the pulse, and this is the thing that is going to hurt me the most. Is that whenever I see technology that's on the pulse, I would always call Mark up or email Mark or get a feedback from him. And so now I'm going to only see him in my dreams. Maybe the new virtual reality. The issue for me though about the brain machine and feeding upon our habits, Facebook feeds upon our habits, so they make lots of money from that and then they sell them back to us. And all the other people doing that is, do you believe that we will be able to map the brain enough to really get in there, to give me a brain update? You don't think so?
No, I don't believe that. Brains are very, very, very complex, and we only have brains to try to explore it. Using brains to try to figure out brains is kind of a losing proposition. It's fun trying. I'm going to keep trying as long as I'm alive. But
I don't like being a guinea pig. The Elon Musk story about what they've been doing to that poor chimpanzees drives me mad.
Well, we don't see him wanting to put these implants in his brain, do we?
Well, he's not going to be the first person to Mars, is he? He's not going to be the first person in the Tesla Auto Drive. That's what all the plebeians to do.
We should encourage these people to go to Mars and stay.
There was an argument about nuclear power, which is if it's so safe, the first place you put a nuclear power station is the House of Parliament.
I support this.
I'd like to see Boris glow in the dark.
Yeah, so putting implants in our brains isn't the way to figure out how the brain works. This is a way for Elon Musk to make even more money and more power over other people. It has nothing to do with exploring the brain. There will be a few people who will benefit from it who have who aren't born with abilities or lose abilities that other people have. Some people may have enhanced abilities as a result, but more people are going to be having their lives destroyed by trying to have more enhanced abilities. That's the way I see it. And then this goes on to people who want to upload their brains into a computer and therefore live forever. But, you know, one of the things that makes life worth living is that we all die. You know, Mark's dead, right?
Yes.
You know, like, what does that teach us? You know, Mark lived his life often to the fullest. I never met him. I wasn't fortunate enough to meet him. But, you know, clearly he did a lot of cool things with the time he had. You're doing cool things. We're all doing cool things with the time we have. If we have an infinite amount of time, it's all meaningless.
We are just fretting upon a stage. Mark is getting to do what he really wanted to do.
All right, folks, this is getting grim.
Oh,
This is all grim. Look, we're all good lefty liberals here. If you leave us talking long enough, the whole thing
we'll bore you.
It just gets too grim. And what we need now is a little girl singing happy songs. And I give everyone an Evie. Your mom's in the loo. We're going to wait for mom to come back from the loo. You're going to work on your vocal cords. Sing la 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 la. Well, meanwhile, I tell you what, I'll do a quick intro. Hi, I'm David, and anyway, you know the thing. And I'd just like to thank. We're going to have David Bramwell come out and give a quick talk. How quick is your talk about Mark? David Bramwell is going to come out and talk about Mark. And I'd like to thank David Bramwell for letting us steal his shtick. Because it's so much fun to be David Bramwell for a night, and we're doing the talks, we're doing the whole Catalyst Club thing. Mark was, I don't know if you know, this is the home of the Catalyst Club. David Bramwell has a thing, a monthly thing where people come up, they do 15-minute talks about something they care passionately about. And Mark Bennett was here every single one of them, and I know this because he recorded most of them. Mark's sister and I were going through these DVDs, and there were just tons of Catalyst Club things, and he was like an active participant. And then I was looking for footage from, about Mark or whatever, and David Bramwell keeps popping up in it as a kind of bit player. So you have the 3D thing, and a handsome young man comes and looks at the 3D thing, and it's David. But anyway, David Bramwell.
Thank you. I'm kind of aware that the people who've spoken so far have been talking about Mark's brilliant mind and his ability to communicate and his knowledge and passion for pioneering